Hello, Steve White 89. Well, I finally saw the remake of Roadhouse. Now, I just watched the original the other day, and I watched the first 45 minutes of the second one, and I had to stop. So I commenced it from 45 minutes in, and I was enjoying it up until then because Conor McGregor hadn't shown up yet. But a couple of minutes later, he showed up, and the film did kind of go down a level. He spends the whole film with this stupid grin on his face, like he's just surprised that someone let him be in a film. He can't act at all. It's absolutely awful. He takes things to a really just ridiculous level. Until then, there was at least some hope of some character development and some story, but then it just becomes, superhero man fighting superhero man as some weird male fantasy where these guys can just beat the hell out of each other and walk away. Or just be just so superior they can just dominate any situation. And it's just a real male fantasy, but it didn't have the character or uniqueness of the original film, where Patrick Stewart created this really interesting character who you couldn't quite work out. You couldn't really pin him down, and it was just interesting. Whereas this character, and I love Jake Gyllenhaal so much, but this character, he did nothing with it. He's just damaged, tortured, closed man with dark past. Basically, he was like an MMA fighter or whatever it's called, and he beat the hell out of a friend, a competitor, and killed him. He just kept beating him in the head, even though he was down and out. They kept beating him in the head until they pulled him off him, and he was dead. He just didn't get up, and he actually looked surprised. I'm like, there's something wrong with him. He's a damaged person. The Patrick Swayze character wasn't damaged. He did things, violent things, and he was a fighter, and he ended up, I'm not going to go through that whole film again, but there was reasons behind it. He was saving his friends, he was saving a town, he was freeing people from an oppressive sort of person who sort of owned half the town. This, it's not quite the same. There is another rich guy. He's inherited everything from his father, and he's trying to buy the bar so he can use the whole section of beach to basically build a big resort. And she's the one holdout, and they're basically making her life hell. That's why she hires him to come in. But and the romance doesn't really work in this. There's a fairly aggressive girl who turns out to be the daughter of the sheriff, who actually stops her from killing Jake at one point by slapping him in the face, just walking up and slapping him in the face. And you're like, who the hell? How can she? Oh, that's her father? Okay. Interesting relationship they have. But you do see him go through all these weird situations, and I'm like, there's a few scenes, like one guy just shows up with a gun to kill him, and I'm like, of course, they know where he lives. Why wouldn't they just go and shoot him? Doesn't work. But at least there was some common sense, some of the characters. And there is one good character who is just sort of in the background, just sort of being kind of, he's just quite not one of the guys, and he manages to be the only one who survives. And he basically says, "Are you going to kill me?" And he just says, "Look, I'm not really in this sort of loop, sort of thing. If you could just let me go, I'll go," sort of thing. He just goes off on his bike, and I'm like, that was kind of funny. It could have been played a bit better, but it was still pretty funny. Because you can see that sort of coming through the whole film. But yeah, the violence is surreal. It's not realistic at all, but it's not sort of action like fun. It's not sort of over the top. It's not like James Bond, Fast and the Furious sort of big spectacle action. It's very small, violent fights, which they have some great shots. Like there's a shot where Jake is walking on a highway and you see a car come behind him. You know it's going to try and run him down, and it comes at him, either hits him or he throws himself over it and then lands on the road, and you keep with him the whole time, and there's no way they could have done that for real. So you know it's using CGI or doubles or everything. But it works, but it doesn't, because you know they couldn't have done that shot in real time, so you know it's fake, but you can't see how it's fake, and it's kind of like, just doesn't work. But it's interesting, technically it's interesting how they did some of the fights and some of the scenes and stuff like that. You do feel like you're inside of a couple of them, and some of the movements and that are fairly amazing. You think, okay, I know the actor didn't do all that. There's stuntmen in here somewhere, but they've seamlessly joined the actor to the stuntman and so forth. So it's interesting. But it just doesn't really work. This character he was just a damaged, closed man who was hiding something, and then, he just had this issue where he couldn't stop once he starts, and it was just it just came off as really basic toxic masculinity fantasy of like, I'm a big tough man, I can beat anyone up and walk away. It doesn't really work like that. People can't take these sort of hits and keep going. Yet you see these two men who apparently can. And there is a moment where Connor says to him, there's something wrong with you, like me. Like something's not connected where like he's not responding to pain and injury like he should. But yeah, it just, I mean, the last scene was pretty shocking. Like when Jake gets stabbed with this shard of wood, I yelled out loud, like Jesus, oh my God, because it just looked so real going into his side, and stuff like that kind of worked. And then Connor and him both had pieces of broken wood, and eventually he gets both of them and he just stabs Connor like 6 times in all these different places and takes him down. But then the worst part of the film is the ending. The ending is Connor walking out of an emergency room after he's just trashed the place, after I guess waking up from being unconscious, and he's walking out, and I'm like, what is there going to be a round 2? Are we supposed to believe he could live through that and still fight? It's just like, oh well, they can't kill him. Yes, Superman has to come back. The super toxic masculine fantasy has to survive. I'm like, yeah, really disappointed. Wasted 2 hours. Can't believe I saw a Jake Gyllenhaal film where I didn't love him and didn't love the film, because it's the first he's been in that was sucked. And I understand why this didn't go to cinemas. I know the director kicked up a stink because it didn't, but it didn't because it's just not good. And not even in a way where it's aware of it and making fun of itself, that you can enjoy. It just doesn't work. And there's not going to be a long review. I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the films, because the original is brilliant and this one just failed.